Hello and welcome to the Give Me the Remote podcast. This is episode 37. It is the 24th of April 2019. My name is John and I am joined in the podcast by...
Sheridan!
Woo! Okay, and Sheridan, it is a pleasure as always to have you in the Give Me the Remote podcast. And what are we talking about first?
Well, let's start off with a rather sad farewell to Broad City.
Good morning, bitch.
Jesus. Bitch, how do you feel?
I feel great. You guys feel great? Great.
Come on over.
Holy shit, Pocket.
May I kiss you? Yeah.
Yes, so this is season 5.
Season 5.
Which in Australia is only available on Foxtel.
That's correct.
Which we only get to watch Game of Thrones.
That is also correct.
But we put it on a little early to get through Broad City.
We did.
So for those who've never watched an episode of Broad City, and it's quite a niche show, so there's a lot of people out there. It was written by and stars two liberated young women of the modern era who feel that they can take what used to be gross-out male comedy and make it their own.
Yes. So Abby Jacobson and Ilana Glazer star as Abby and Ilana in a show that they started off as a YouTube series, which was...
Oh, I did not know that. Okay.
Or I don't know if it was on YouTube, I assume it was, but...
Is it still there?
I don't know, I assume it will be. I've never watched it and am now interested to watch it. But we're basically little 10-minute episodes, and Amy Poehler saw it and took on an executive producer role and took it to Comedy Central, and it has become... I mean, it's a critically acclaimed show, is extremely successful. I've never told anyone to watch it and they haven't come back to me probably like 8 months later, because it takes them that long to watch it because they think it's not going to interest them, and go, oh my God, thank you so much for telling me about that show. It's amazing.
Yeah, I find Broad City's a really good litmus test of, frankly, whether someone's really cool.
Yeah.
Like, really cool people either already know about it or are open to it and watch it. Because, I mean, it is... I wouldn't say it breaks an enormous amount of new ground. I'd say shows from 15, 20 years ago, like Men Behaving Badly, did similar things, but it was always... All of the shows in this vein were in a male voice.
Yeah, and, I mean, there's a couple of things it's got going for it. The first that you've identified being that it is actually essentially a show about female friendship and their chemistry, and the way that they write their friendship is extremely believable and endearing, and you just kind of fall in love with them and want to be their friend, basically. But it also does speak a lot to the kind of anxieties and desires of millennials in a way that I don't think has been done, that's not condescending to millennials. A lot of comedy... Well, this
is written by and for, so...
Yeah, like a lot of comedy shows about the millennials. I mean, even like Girls, which is written by millennials. And, I mean, it is essentially a comedy, and there's comedic elements to Girls.
Personally, I think Broad City is a massively superior show to Girls, with the exception of the dramatic arcs, which Broad City, it's not a drama.
No, but Girls, essentially, they're very unlikable.
Yeah.
And it actually highlights the flaws of millennials more than anything, whereas this is like a celebration of kind of all the cool things about millennials, and how kind of gives you hope for the future, really, when you watch Broad City. So I think it's just really successful in the depiction of young people.
I mean, I would say, while I would like to be their friends, I would not like to be their co-workers.
Oh no, especially Ilana, she'd be shocking. She goes and takes naps in the bathroom for like an hour.
But it's self-conscious to that extent that it shows them as flawed human beings, probably no better or worse than anyone I've ever actually met.
Yeah, I mean, Abby's just so awkward and always kind of putting her foot in her mouth or doing something stupid. But it's funny. I mean, that's where a lot of the humour comes from.
Yeah, no, so that's the show in general, but season 5... in a lot of ways, it was just a victory lap.
Yeah, like, you can't start with season 5.
No, and you'd miss the in-jokes. Particularly, they really rounded out the Bevers story arc in all sorts of weird ways that only make sense if you watch the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, one of the great things about this as a final season is it's quite, as a fan, it's a rewarding exit because they are still on top. It's actually a good season. I didn't feel as though they're past their use-by date.
Yeah.
They closed off every single character.
I wouldn't say every single, but they definitely went through the
Everyone gets all of the main characters get a goodbye episode.
Yeah.
Like Hamey, Alana's roommate, Lincoln, her boyfriend, everyone gets sort of its own standalone
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that
farewell.
way. But
It's really actually nice to have that as a fan.
Yeah, I think that's really worth noting that, if you haven't watched Broad City at all, then go back and start season 1. And also that if you've watched it before and you weren't sure if you wanted to watch a final season, that as final seasons go, this is a really good one.
Yeah.
And probably way better than How I Met Your Mother.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think is a valid comparison. But, because in some ways, this is How I Met Your Mother from a female perspective.
Yeah, and at the younger end of that generation.
Yeah.
But I was sad to see it end, but at the same time felt satisfied that I wasn't kind of like, should we still keep watching Broad City? I don't know if they've got it anymore. You didn't have to have that kind of conversation, which I think probably did with How I Met Your Mother.
Oh, How I Met Your Mother easily was 3 seasons overdue and closed it badly.
Yeah. Which
is a shame, because it was a show that had some considerable charm for a long part of its run.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say about this one?
No, I think I'm done.
Okay, how many stars?
I'm just going to give it 5 stars because I just love the show. It's one of my most favourite shows for the past decade.
Yeah, you know what? My gut feeling was 4, and then I thought, why am I holding a star back?
It's definitely not the best season.
It's not the best season, and it's not the best show, but it will make you happy. It'll make you laugh. There is absolutely nothing wrong with it. It also, almost unique, not unique's too strong, but a very rare thing, is it offers you perspectives into worlds you haven't lived.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And I think even if you lived in New York, this would be offering you a perspective, unless you were actually these women, into worlds you haven't lived.
Yeah.
But as someone who doesn't live in New York but has only visited it, it certainly felt very valid. Yeah. 5 stars from me. Awesome. So what's next?
Well, we're sticking with female comics. Let's go for Amy Schumer Growing.
In movies and TV shows, the guy always gets down on one knee, right? And the girl's always shocked. I didn't even know you liked me. I'm still on Bumble.
Which is her most recent Netflix special.
Comedy special, yep.
Amy's pregnant. She married a chef and is now living in domestic heteronormative bliss.
Yes.
And doing stand-up about it.
Yes.
Immediately one thinks about Ali Wong, who of course...
Ali Wong did it so much better.
Yeah, we'll agree with that. But as a little bit of a tidbit, apparently Amy was so paranoid that she has been accused of stealing jokes in the past. She was so paranoid that she might have accidentally taken some material from Ali Wong that she got her friend, John Mulaney, also a comic, to cross-check to make sure there was no
Yeah, look, I would say I did not think of Ali Wong once while I watched this.
Really? It's the most immediate... I mean, the most...
I think 2 pregnant women can do a comedy routine without crossing over, and I'm just saying, when I watched this, I didn't think of Ali Wong once.
Well, I mean, I just did from the perspective of when I was like, I wonder if she's going to be as good as Ali Wong.
Which she wasn't.
No, she wasn't.
But that's... Because, like, I have some criticisms of this show. And not even criticisms, it's just a lot of meh. But stealing Ali Wong's jokes is not a criticism.
No,
I personally level
she didn't
here.
steal Ali Wong's jokes. It was quite a different show to Ali Wong.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with it.
No.
It's just a bit of meh.
Yeah, so I mean, I have a sort of problematic relationship with Amy Schumer because, frankly, she's highly relatable to me as a white, straight female. So her comedy is very relatable for me. But she's problematic because she does that, and all comics, I guess, have to do this to an extent when they start going into, like, vulgarity and kind of political and...
I love vulgarity and humour.
Yeah.
And I love transgression.
But she does it she just does it in a icky way sometimes. And I mean, she's definitely made some racist jokes in the past, like really bad ones.
Yeah, which is probably because I mean Amy Schumer is unbelievably privileged.
Yeah, so I mean this is the criticism of her.
Was it her cousin is a United States senator?
Yeah.
And a very senior one at that.
And I mean this has always been the criticism, that she's a bit entitled and that she kind of lacked some self-awareness with a lot of the jokes that she did. And you know, she's a comic that's frankly operating in a time when people are kind of sick of hearing white people jokes in a lot of ways. Like, you know, like there's so much richness and diversity in comedy at the moment that those kind of voices kind of, they're not that original and they fade into the background a little. And she did come out and her, you know, her originality was that she talked about promiscuity extremely openly.
Yeah.
And she was one of the first mainstream comics to do that, female comics.
And as a, I think I'm being reasonably okay to say plus-sized woman talking about still being sexual and attractive. She's a very attractive woman. So when she jokes about these things, it's always a bit, yeah, you're still really attractive.
Yeah, but I agree with what you're saying, though. She's not poster girl gorgeous. She's someone you could be friends with.
What, do you defriend? You've got some skinny, attractive friends.
But you know what I mean? She's relatable. Like, you don't feel intimidated by her looks.
Yeah, I mean, particularly inside Amy Schumer, they'd always do these cut scenes where she's walking down streets in New York and then she puts a really steely look right into the camera, and there was something, it felt like she was looking right at you and seeing you.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's a real talent for people who can give that look.
So, I mean, I think she's become a little bit more self-aware, perhaps, of especially the kind of racially charged jokes. There's definitely none of that in there. There is one joke that kind of references the racism when she makes a joke and says, if you think that's racist, that's on you. Which seemed to me to be a bit of a nod that she kind of acknowledged that she'd made some bad jokes in the past. I mean, one of the things that's a little bit frustrating is she does seem to continue to ignore the fact that she started off comedy as quite a privileged person. Like you say, she comes from a fairly privileged background. But at the time of this special, she's basically really famous.
Really famous and very wealthy.
Very wealthy. I mean, she has been in a lot of mainstream movies. Like, I don't know how many Amy Schumer movies you see popping up on Netflix, but she's in a lot of movies in the past 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
And she kind of she doesn't really talk about that in the comedy. It's kind of like she tries to sort of act like, yeah, I'm one of you ladies, but she's not. Like, she's not anymore. She might have been when she started.
She never was.
But she might have been able to get
Cousin of a
away.
United States senator is never you and me. It's always
As a viewer, you didn't know that kind of,
I guess not, yeah.
You know, niche family history. Yeah. And she just came across as your slutty friend. And that was the stick she was playing.
And the slutty friend with tons of money is a good friend to have.
But now everyone knows she's famous. I know she's famous. I know she's loaded. Yeah. And she kind of ignores that a little, and I think it just sort of makes the comedy a little bit meh, because it's not as believable and relatable anymore.
Look, I just felt this was a pretty low energy outing by her standards. Now, admittedly, she is heavily pregnant. That probably doesn't help the energy.
And apparently is very unwell, actually. But, you know, she makes a joke about that the only reason she's doing it is because she's contractually obligated. I mean, that is rubbish. I mean, that's a joke.
I don't know. Those Netflix contracts seem pretty mean. We're not doing Jim Jeffries this week, but he talks a lot about the contracts he's got himself into with Netflix. And
Yeah, but Jim Jeffries is still no Amy Schumer. I think she can get out of them.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think she wanted to do the show. There are some really funny moments. There's definitely... I laughed out loud.
It's not without humour. I mean, when I judge this, I would say for a start, if I had never seen Amy Schumer before, I could have watched this and go, wow, this woman's really switched on, really funny. I want to see more of her stuff. But because I've seen Amy Schumer at her best, when I see her phone it in, it's 2 stars worth of disappointment.
Yeah.
And I do feel this is, at some level, a phone it in effort.
Yeah, I mean, I thought some of that she pulled back a little bit, and that worked well. I think without the over-the-top vulgarity was actually
I don't know,
better.
when she pulls her dress up and spins around and shows off
she
her
hasn't
heavily pregnant body, you know.
She hasn't lost it completely, and I think it's a bit better for it. She's a bit more restrained. But yeah, it's not the best Netflix comedy special. I'm sort of torn actually about what to give it in stars rating.
I mean, the other thing I'd say is Inside Amy Schumer is some of the best comedy ever made, but
It is up and down though.
I was about to say
She's up and down. That's the problem.
It's as hit and miss as any sketch comedy show ever made is.
It's pretty hard to find a comic that's not up and down though. It's the nature of comedy.
Yeah, but particularly doing sketch comedy on a regular basis.
Yeah.
I mean, Saturday Night Live has the best writers in the world, and it is so hit and miss.
Oh yeah.
And if that's your gold standard, then everything else you've got to. But this is a stand-up comedy show. She literally had a year to write this, and she can literally afford to get really good writers to write jokes for her as well.
Yeah.
So you kind of would expect a red-hot effort.
Yeah, I don't think she would have had that long to write it though, because the whole show is predicated. Well, a lot of the show is predicated on her pregnancy, which only existed for a few months, presumably.
Sure, it's called Growing. But at the same time, she's no longer in a position where she has to write her own jokes.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of material there that's not related to the pregnancy. Like, there's a lot of material about the marriage and her husband having autism, and that was actually pretty funny.
That'd be hard, wouldn't it?
Why?
Let's move on. So, how many stars are you giving it?
Oh, I think I'm going to give it 3. I did toss up giving it 4 though.
Yeah, I'm a straight middle of the road 3. But as we often do, I'm going to caveat that score and say, if you've never seen Amy Schumer before, this is probably not the worst way to dip your toe in that waters. And you should watch Amy Schumer because she's often extremely funny. So it's still eminently watchable, worth watching, but we know she can do better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So what's next?
Special.
Yes, okay.
Hey, focus. Save that for Grindr.
I love that you think I have enough self-esteem to be on Grindr.
So Special was written and produced and starred by Ryan O'Connell, who has, I think it's okay to say, mild cerebral palsy.
Yes.
But obviously has a disability. He wrote a book about his life and has now turned it into a TV show.
Mm-hmm.
And
quite a weird little TV show. 14 minutes episodes is odd.
Yeah, so it's about seven episodes.
I thought it was 8.
Maybe 8.
But
and they're 14 minutes.
So basically it's a 2-hour movie that's pretending to be a series.
Yeah, well, what I realised is now, knowing that it's based on the book that he wrote, is that there was obviously only enough material. And because he's a one-man show, I'm presuming that they didn't have a lot of money to go around and expand it out and hire a bigger writing team.
I mean, it's still well produced. It looks like a as expensive a show as anything. It's not Dirty John level of Monday Matinee or anything like that.
Well, I actually feel like there would have been more money gone into Dirty John, because
It had bigger name actors, but
also there was a lot more sets. Like, if you think about this show...
not about such shit. But I just say, this looks like a modern, properly colour graded, properly produced show.
Yeah, but I think this is what you can do now with...
Well, but I'm saying we get shows like Dirty John that still look cheap, and this doesn't look cheap.
No, it doesn't look cheap, but there's there's 3 sets? Or 4 sets?
It's
There's his mum's house, his house, his office.
A few bars.
But they're pretty... If I was thinking about it, there's not a lot...
It's the boyfriend's house.
There's not a lot going on.
Oh,
It doesn't look bad. I wouldn't have
There's
noticed.
a whole bunch of dudes' houses. I mean, the whole show is basically a bunch of dudes' houses.
Oh, yeah, so the other thing is he's gay.
Yeah. That's not a spoiler. That's right out there at the start.
Yeah, well, and actually, I don't think it really kind of is a spoiler anymore, because it's so... And it's one of these shows that... the really awesome thing about it is that he's gay and has a disability, and they're actually not really the main parts of the show.
Yeah, although I would say it does feature the most graphic display of male-to-male homosexual sex that I have ever seen, even in porn.
Well, I guess there's a couple of questions there, or comments. You obviously didn't watch Queer as Folk.
I did watch Queer as Folk, and it was nowhere near as...
You didn't see any penis.
No, you don't see any penis, but the scene is fine. I'm not criticising the show for it. I'm just saying there's a bunch of hetero dudes out there who are going to be quite uncomfortable in that scene.
Well, you all just need to check yourselves.
Yeah, that's fine. And the show, I'm definitely saying, is worth watching, and I'm not disqualifying on that grounds. I'm just warning some of our listeners that that moment and it's going to feel like 3 hours long. But
was there even a butt in the scene?
Yeah, there's like both butts.
But there was it was side butt.
It was the butts move around. But
I accept.
Let's not dwell too long on this.
I don't think it was a particularly graphic scene, but I don't think that. I think what makes it uncomfortable
is that it's actually really well written.
Well, it's very realistic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that maybe to some straight men who struggle with their sexuality or something, I don't know. I didn't find it uncomfortable viewing at all myself.
Yep.
I mean, it is an awkward scene. It's what it's meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like the disability and the disability aspect plays a big part in the show, and it's but it's not. Really, it's a show just about friendship and family and relationships with a guy that happens to be gay and disabled.
Yeah, and there's also, I would say, he is often, a big part of it is his efforts to break it in the world of professional blogging, and having been one of a reasonably few number of human beings who's actually made a living as a professional blogger for a number of years in my life, it rings very, very, very true that all of that stuff is... if you've ever wondered what it's like, folks, just watch this show. It's got it covered.
Although I have to say, he didn't seem to be producing very much content.
Yeah, but
unlike an actual professional blogger.
What he wrote was good. Although I probably was the psycho editor, not the... Anyway, let's move on from that.
One of the things I really did like too is that often I think in shows that depict disabled people, there's kind of this... I'm trying to choose my words carefully, but...
For a start, I think you meant people with a disability, or persons with a disability.
Well, what did I say?
Disabled people.
Yeah, yes, okay. I feel like that's more grammatical error than me being politically incorrect.
That's what we all think, and then we can find out we're wrong.
Anyway, but there's this sort of a sense that these characters can't have any flaws, that they're sort of very altruistic and perfect.
No, it's a beautiful moment where the mum's boyfriend says he's being an asshole.
Yeah, and he said people were sort of forcing him to be assholes too.
And the mum loses it, saying, "How dare you say my disabled son's an asshole?" It's the guy who played Harry Hamlin in Better Call Saul, and he's basically playing himself, as far as I can tell, because it's the same character he plays in everything he does, but it's well tuned. It's nice.
Well, I thought it was quite a different character to the Better Call Saul lawyer.
The character's different, but it was still played in much the same way. He was super confident and
he's
handsome.
an attractive older man.
Yeah.
I think you'd be hard pressed to find anyone that's older than 25 that wouldn't bang that dude. Straight woman.
Yeah.
Or straight, or
Plenty of gay
homosexual.
men. Yeah. But it's a beautiful turn by that actor. And in particular, that moment where he just says, he's been an asshole and mum loses it. It was good television. Because as an audience member, you're like, no, he's right.
But he also, like, Ryan, the main character, he is actually, like, a bit of a douchebag sometimes.
All the time.
Like, really selfish.
Yeah, but he's written himself as that, which is brave, and you've got to acknowledge and appreciate that he has written himself as an asshole in a way that he knows the audience is going to say he's being an asshole, and that's good writing for someone writing about themselves. Yeah,
and also, though, like, actually acknowledges that disabled people, persons with a disability, are human. Like there's a humanity to them, and being human is about being flawed and a bit of a douchebag sometimes.
But also that with all the frustrations of their disability, they're often going to be very bad people.
Yeah, and I think it's just really nice to see a realistic portrayal in that way that you don't often see. But I don't know, I can't speak for that because I don't obviously have a disability and might not be as aware, except for putting my foot in my mouth. But yeah, I really liked the mother as well, who interestingly was from Breaking Bad. So two people from the Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul series.
It's Vince Gilligan, isn't it?
Yeah.
The Gilligan stable.
Yeah.
That's quite brave casting.
Jessica
actually.
Hecht.
Right.
I really liked the mother. I thought she played the character quite well.
She did. The one thing I found somewhat unlikable, dislikable was that he was playing. Yeah, they explained it that they'd managed to sue the hospital for problems in his childbirth, and there was a huge pile of money. And I acknowledge that's real for some people. There's a hell of a lot of people out there with cerebral palsy who don't have piles of money to play with and can just do internships at fun companies forever.
Yeah, I mean, this is where maybe I feel like the book, if it is, and I haven't read the book, and if the book is, probably goes into details about that, but yeah, there's a bit of a kind of unrealness there about that he makes it to 28, admittedly living with his mother, but then can, go and work for free and get an apartment without an income, and how does that happen? Even with a mass payout for whatever happened to his mother during the childbirth, because presumably that money also has to have been used to accommodate his, living expenses as a result of whatever negligence occurred.
Yeah.
Rather than just living the high life in a nice apartment.
Yeah, look, I mean, I actually think the most interesting character in this, not the most, but definitely one of the most interesting characters in this is Kim.
The friend?
The friend who is the blogger, and she's the interesting one. If you want to see the life of a pro blogger, she's the real deal because, yes, she's got the awesome friends and the party, and she's got the fame and the profile, but then at one point, no, this isn't too spoiled. She's breaking down and saying, look, I'm enormously in debt.
Yeah.
This work does not pay a lot of money.
Yeah, and she's Uber driving.
And there are lifestyle costs, huge lifestyle costs. And that rang enormously true to me, I can tell you. And also you get invited to these parties that you probably can't afford to be at. Yeah. I don't know if there's a lot of sympathy out there in the wider world for that, but as someone who's lived that truth, I found Kim to be really interesting. Plus, I mean, okay, she's really nice to him, even though he's not always that nice to her.
Yeah, that's true. She
In
forgives
fact,
him for a few
there's
things.
a huge number of people, particularly a whole bunch of gay guys, who are just really nice to him.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe the gay community is just really awesome and way better than us heteros. But
And they seem to just sort of bring him into the group very quickly.
yeah,
And this is, I mean, a problem with the show and the length of the episodes is it doesn't sort of have a lot of time to develop some of the narratives. So sort of things happen and you're like, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. I don't know if this guy would just have been immediately been accepted into this social circle. But there's no time to develop that kind of story.
yeah, I'm sure there's going to be a season 2.
And I really hope that they bring on a bigger writing team because that, to me, is the problem with the show.
Yeah, and a few more characters and give it a little more space to breathe. I felt we've been complaining about shows being overly long.
Oh, this was ridiculous.
Too short. Yeah. So I think we're saying 3 to 4 hours is where we want to see some.
Having said that, it was actually, well, it was one of those weird things that we were like, oh, at the end of the whole show? We've only been here. It's 10 o'clock. What are we going to do for the rest of the night?
Yeah. How many stars are you giving it?
I'm going to give it 4 stars.
I'm going to go 4.5, partly because I have
don't
the
do
power.
the half
I have the
stars.
power to do half stars.
I'm really regretting the decision, but I feel as though I have to commit to
You're
it
wedded
now.
to it now, and partly because it gives a really solid view of a part of my life that very few people understand. So hooray for that. But okay, so that's the end of this show. Thank you very much for listening this far. If you have any messages about Sheridan's disgraceful treatment of people with a disability, please do send them through to gmtrpodcast@gmail.com or any comments. We do love reading out your emails when we get them. Also, please do star us and review us on iTunes because that's the only thing that matters in the world of podcasting. And a little souls die every week where we don't get stars. And on that note, I'll say thank you, folks. Good night. Hopefully, sorry, I'll let Sheridan say good night in a second, but hopefully we will be back in a few days, and don't leave you hanging for a month because we feel bad about that.
Was it really a month?
It's too long.
We missed you.
Sorry, folks. Bye.